Facial recognition. Apple, Amazon, Google, and the race for your face. Facial recognition is a blossoming field of technology that is at once exciting and problematic. If you've ever, whether you want it to or not, facial recognition, sometimes called simply face. But at the very least, facial recognition raises questions of privacy. Experts have over the next few weeks, CNET will be diving into facial recognition with in-depth pieces on a wide variety of topics, including the science that allows it to work and the implications, both positive and negative, for many of its applications. To get you up to speed, what is facial recognition? Facial recognition is a form of biometric authentication, which uses body measurements to verify your identity. Facial recognition. How does facial recognition work? All facial recognition systems capture either a 2- or 3-dimensional image of a subject's face, and then compare key information from that image to a database of known images. For law enforcement, Woodrow Woody Bledsoe first developed facial recognition software at a firm called Panoramic Research back in the 1960s using 2-dimensional images, with funding for the research coming from an unnamed intelligence agency. Even now, most facial recognition systems rely on 2D images, either because the camera doesn't have the ability to capture depth information such as the length of your nose or the depth of your eye socket, or because the reference database consists of 2D images such as mugshots or passport photos. 2D facial recognition primarily uses landmarks such as the nose, mouth, and eyes to identify a face, gauging both the width and shape of the features, and the distance between the various features of the face. Those measurements are, this geometric system can struggle with different angles and lighting. A straight-on shot, adding a third dimension. 3D facial recognition software isn't as easily fooled by angles and light and doesn't rely on average head size to guess at a face print. With cameras, most cameras gauge this depth by projecting invisible spectrums of light onto a face and using sensors to capture the distance of various points of this light from the camera itself. Even though if that database consists of 2D images, software needs to convert the 3D face print back to a 2D face print to get a match. Apple's Face ID uses 30,000 infrared dots that map the contours of your face. The iPhone, then, even these more advanced systems can be defeated by something as simple as different facial expressions, wearing glasses, or scarves that obscure parts of your face. Apple's Face ID, reading your pores. A more recent development, called skin texture analysis, could help future applications overcome all of these challenges. Developed by Ident, this method could theoretically be so precise that it can tell the difference between twins. Currently, where is facial recognition being used? While Bledsoe laid the groundwork for the tech, modern facial recognition began in earnest in the 1980s and 90s thanks to mathematicians at MIT. Since then, the Chinese government uses facial recognition for large-scale surveillance in public CCTV cameras, both to catch criminals and monitor the behavior of all individuals with the intent of turning the data into a score. Seemingly harmless, the London Metropolitan Police also use it as a tool when narrowing their search for criminals, though their system supposedly isn't very accurate with incorrect matches reported in a whopping 98% of cases. In the US, facial recognition is undergoing trials at airports to help move people through security more quickly. The Secret Service, facial recognition could have large implications for retail outlets and marketers as well, beyond simply watching for thieves. At CES, bringing facial recognition home. Aside from large-scale installations, facial recognition has several uses in consumer products. Beyond iPhone, Facebook has used facial recognition for years to suggest tags for pictures. Other photo apps in the smart home, after starting as a niche feature in connected cams such as the Netatmo Welcome, facial recognition is now built into several popular models, including the Nest Hello video doorbell. We saw a bunch of connected cams compare faces with others they've seen before, so you can customize notifications based on who the camera sees. All the models we've, beyond the security uses in the home, even robots like Lovett and Sony's Aibo robot dog can recognize faces. Aibo and others, what are the implications? Unlike other forms of biometric authentication, cameras can gather information about your face with or without your knowledge or consent. If you're a privacy, because the technology is so new, there aren't any laws in the US limiting what companies can do with images of your face after they capture it. A bipartisan, the American Civil Liberties Union, delivered a petition to Amazon last year asking it to stop giving its facial recognition technology to law enforcement agencies and the government, calling the prospect a. According to a report by BuzzFeed, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency plans to implement facial recognition to verify the identity of passengers on international flights and airports across the country. The electronic NBC News reported that the databases of pictures used to improve facial recognition often comes from social media sites without the consent of the subject or photographer. Companies like IBM, the Electronic Frontier Foundation notes that current facial recognition systems tend to produce a disproportionately high number of false positives when identifying minorities. NBC story: Facebook faces a class action lawsuit over its own facial recognition technology, called DeepFace, which identified people and photos without their consent. Smart home Ring's video doorbells would have monitored neighborhoods for known sex offenders and those on most. The science behind facial recognition is certainly exciting, and the tech could lead to a safer and more personal smart home, but facial recognition could easily result in a loss of privacy, unjust profiling and violations of personal rights. While the impact of gallery, do you know these texting acronyms? Stacker.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.